Hello everyone, I'm RP Spartan, and we're back with an early guide video. The long-awaited crossbow is finally here. Well, yes, but actually no. I called it in the past when I didn't see the crossbow at launch. I said it would be drip-fed to us in Season 2, probably halfway into season. And when you look at that, a time gate. Wow. Thanks Activision. But enough ranting, let's actually get to the guide. I was able to get my hands on the crossbow and do some testing. This was able to be done in a private match against bots or by myself, as inviting a friend will not work. Most of this guide will cover general stats for multiplayer, but keep in mind, multiplayer and Warzone are balanced differently. Even something as basic as damage is calculated differently with Warzone's armor plates in comparison to multiplayer's armor plates. Also keep in mind, sometimes stats in private multiplayer matches are different from even normal multiplayer, as nothing is certain to be consistent in these games. I will try my best to get as accurate information as possible, but for the purposes of this guide, this will act as an early introduction to a future, more detailed guide on the multiplayer aspect of the crossbow. And then later, I will also make a Warzone guide as well. I wanted to accurately get this information out as soon as possible, as not many content creators give the crossbow the love it deserves, and I want to answer many of the initial questions people may have. So in this early guide 0, I will cover the basic stats such as damage, velocity, and ADS and reload times. We will also cover camo unlocks and unique attachments with some initial opinions from my testing. At the end, we will finish up with some build recommendations and playstyle advice. I'll timestamp each chapter in the description, and I'll do my best to make this as brief as possible. Alright, let's get started. We'll get started with some of the basics, and what's more basic than damage? Well, I wish I could answer that, but as of right now, there is no way for me to accurately get an exact value, so instead, we'll do the next best thing, shots to kill. Luckily for us, not much has changed from the Modern Warfare 2019 crossbow. At my longest testing range, it seems to be a one-shot kill anywhere in the head, neck, and torso. I would also like to cautiously add upper arms to this list, as I think I was able to one-shot my target, but non-stop moving bots made this difficult to verify. Once we get to the limbs, this changes to a 2-shot kill. This means the legs and lower arms will require a second bolt. In Warzone 2.0, I am seeing footage of the standard bolt downing players with 3 plates to the head. I was unable to test anything in Warzone, so be cautious of the many claims made by others. If the crossbow follows the damage values of its predecessor, it will most likely be a 2-shot to the upper chest and a 3-shot to the limbs on fully plated enemies. As for the damage range, I tried to test out as far as I could, but my shots to kill remained the same. I am unsure if there is a damage drop off, but the Modern Warfare 2019 version did not have one, and I don't know if this has changed. When the crossbow releases, I will be able to further test this with a friend. As for our velocity, the crossbow without attachments has a velocity of approximately 102.8 meters per second at 50 meters. You can also give or take a few meters per second, as this was hand tested and there was an occasional frame difference by 1 or 2. The 102 meters per second means by default the bolt speed is very slow and will also drop very quickly over distance. At 50 meters, this will change a headshot into a chest shot, or worse, a stomach shot into a leg shot. This also means you have to aim ahead of your target at medium and longer ranges, and by a greater distance than most firearms. Almost every attachment changes this stat, so I'll be sure to cover the changes with my build recommendations. As for our accuracy, we have a major change from the Modern Warfare 2019 crossbow. RNG is no longer a thing, or at least the impact is so small in the 6v6 maps, I cannot find a difference. So we no longer need to pray to the gods that our bolts will hit the center and not fly wildly off target. This was by far the best improvement I have seen to the crossbow. Out of 5 shots with many attachment setups, I hit within inches of my grouping. This means the bolt will go where you want it, calculating drop of course. Another improvement to our accuracy is the ability to hold your breath even with iron sights. This is a huge improvement for our long range play, as uncontrollable idle sway will no longer make you miss. There is one more prominent feature of the crossbow that only a few weapons have. After firing a shot, your crosshair does not recenter from your recoil. This means every shot will not readjust to where you aimed previously, and the recoil will keep moving your crosshair upward after each shot. Exclusive Ace did a video on the SAB50 for those of you who want to see what this looks like. This means the more recoil you have, the more you will have to readjust manually for the next shot, which shouldn't matter too much on a single shot weapon. Next, we have our reload time. I had trouble telling the exact timing, so I have 2 extremely close values, 2.8 seconds and 3 seconds. So for simplicity's sake, I will say 3 seconds for the full reload animation. This improves with fast hands down to a 2.2 second reload. These reload timings are almost identical to the Modern Warfare 2019 version, so if you're a fan of that, this should feel the same. As for our aim down sight times, I had a bit of trouble on which value to give during my hand testing, so I'll give both testing values for now. The first value is when you get the hold breath prompt, and the second value is when the full animation for aim down sight is finished. The base crossbow has an ADS time of 800 milliseconds for the full animation, while the hold breath prompt appears at 366 milliseconds. This is slower than average for other marksman rifles, so it may feel clunky. Quickly covering our sprint to fire time, we have a time of 350 milliseconds for normal sprinting and a long 416 milliseconds for our attack sprint. This feels like a weapon that punishes firing out of a sprint, so be careful when running around corners. That covers all the basic stats for the crossbow, so now we can cover camo challenges. Our camo challenges are very similar to other marksman rifles, to no surprise. We have our standard get 50 kills for our first camo. Next is get 5 double kills. Our third challenge is get 15 kills from behind, and our last is get 20 kills while prone. Our gold challenge is standard, 3 kills without dying 10 times, platinum is 25 long shots, and polyatomic is 25 headshots. Yep, that's all for the crossbow camo challenges. Moving on to attachments. So now we're at the meat of the guide. I am still testing many of these attachments, so I am missing a lot of data as of the release of this guide. I just wanted to give a brief overview of the attachments, the general concepts, and what to expect. I won't go into exact numbers for many of these because my data is incomplete, so I will save that for my longer guide. So let's start with the two most impactful attachments, arms and bolt type. Starting with the arms, these have the most impact on how the crossbow performs. Many of these affect velocity, recoil, ADS speed, and movement speed. We have 4 arms to choose from, with 2 arms harming our ADS speed for better velocity or accuracy, and 2 arms improving our ADS speed and movement speed, but harming our recoil and velocity. This is where most players must choose between speed or power. The attachment to be of note for both Warzone and multiplayer is the SO Momenti arms, as it increases bolt velocity by roughly 25% based on my small data pool. This boost is massive and by far the most impactful out of any attachment available. In the future, I'll have more data and numbers to share about the arms. Next, we have our second most important attachment, the bolts. There are 3 special bolts to choose, Caustic, Bright Blaze, and Blast Cap. For simplicity, I'll just refer to them as gas, thermite, and explosive bolts. They function exactly how they did in Modern Warfare 2019, so this should sound familiar. In normal multiplayer, the standard bolt will do just fine in most cases, unless you run into a riot shield, then only the explosive and thermite can help you. Each special bolt will affect our velocity negatively, though some more than others. Starting with the gas bolt, this will feel like the standard bolt except with a very minor velocity penalty. They only explode in a tear gas cloud when hitting a player. Very annoying and fun. Exploded bolts cannot be retrieved and the damage matches the standard bolt. Thermite bolts are the neglected black sheep of the family. They burn for very little damage, they have a small radius, they have a moderate velocity penalty, but will still kill hitting anywhere in multiplayer. However, the burn is pathetically weak. Standing directly on top of a burning bolt will not kill a 100 health player. If I had to guess, it might deal 78 damage like the old nerfed Warzone 1 crossbow. I would not recommend this for Warzone. They massacred my boy in Warzone 1 and now he is still weak in Warzone 2. Now, we're at the best bolt for Warzone 1, the explosive bolt. They added even more penalties, making the velocity penalty negative 8%. However, in multiplayer, this will kill limb hits after a 1-second timer. I am unsure how the bomb squad perk will affect this yet, so stand by for that data. What makes this better than the thermite bolt is standing on this bolt will kill a player, meaning it deals at least 100 damage. If I had to guess, it might deal 108 damage as that was the old explosive damage value. This needs Warzone testing, but I hope it matches the old crossbow performance. This is what made the crossbow unique. Side note, the explosive timer is 2 seconds if you hit an inanimate object. Next, we have the wires. These affect velocity, recoil, and accuracy. Since the crossbow no longer has random accuracy, as far as I can tell, the 28 strand is now much more viable. In the past, this used to make your bolts fly drastically off target, but as of now, the bolts stay within inches of my testing. The increased velocity is only a small amount, roughly 5%, but every bit counts. This will be my personal pick, but I require testing at a longer range, beyond 50 meters, to finalize my opinion. Hi, RP Spartan from the future. I was able to find a line of sight of 95 meters on Tarak, So I did some long range testing, and yes, it does in fact hurt accuracy. But there's a twist. The crossbow still has a bit of randomness to the shot. It's not as drastic as Modern Warfare 2019, but still enough to make you miss the head at 100 meters with this attachment. The twist is this only occurs if you're using an optic that has a very small scope glint or less. This includes sights like the VOK 4-powered, red dot sights, and iron sights. Any scope that has a small scope glint or higher will have no randomness to the bolt accuracy. This inaccuracy penalty won't be noticeable in most 6v6 maps, but it will impact long range shots in ground war or warzone. Here's a quick graphic to show the differences. Okay, back to the warp between realities. Our old favorite is 16 strand. Sadly, this may not be as viable anymore. There is a drastic velocity penalty that really hurts the bolt drop. However, I will say the already accurate crossbow gets even more accurate and controllable. It barely kicks, making your next shot easier to line up, and bolts will hit with absolute pinpoint accuracy. During my testing, I was hitting the exact same bolt over 10 times. If you're keeping your engagements close to medium range, or you need follow-up shots and accuracy, this might be a good choice. A quick side note, there is a sentence in the description talking about the bolt giving a shorter trigger delay, but I could not find any delay during my initial testing. I will test this in more detail at a later point. Now, we're on to personal preference attachments, choosing a stock, grip, or sight. As for stocks, there are 4 unique stocks that help in different ways. We have a decent boost with each of these listed above, so choose wisely. As for grips, these have less of an impact, but might be a safer pick. And if you're like me, I cannot use the iron sight. This makes an optic my preferred choice and is purely personal preference. You get all the marksman rifle sights to choose from, including an 11-powered variable zoom scope. Personally, I like to stay with the medium range sights such as the VOK 4-powered or Schlager 3.4-powered. They have easy to read markings and zoom good enough for close and long range fights. I won't leave you all without guidance, so let's talk builds. I'll just get this one out of the way since I know every streamer is going to call this
OP build, best crossbow build out there,
or whatever. Just keep in mind, I was only able to test these in 6v6 maps, so anything beyond 75 meters was untested. Keep that in mind if you build your crossbow for Warzone, as engagement distances are usually beyond 100 meters. This build is mostly for medium to long range shots, and can somewhat engage in close range. Since the crossbow has less RNG to the bolt accuracy, we need to strengthen our velocity. The SO Mementi arms will be a must-have for almost any build. And a sentence I thought I'd never say, but use the 28 strand cable to boost your velocity because it retains a decent bolt accuracy. Just keep in mind, your crosshair will kick high. From there, we can use the speed track stock for minimizing our ADS penalty, bringing it closer to our original ADS time. Keep in mind, you will sway and recoil higher, so there will need to be more adjustment on your next shot. For our bolt, we have 2 choices, standard or explosive. If the enemy is using a riot shield or camping corners, use explosive. If you're playing Warzone, explosives. DMZ, you guessed it, explosives. For normal multiplayer, however, the standard bolt would do just fine. Just be sure to hit the torso or head. If you can't land those shots consistently, then feel free to use explosives. If you go the standard bolt route, feel free to add a laser or grip of your choice. Our last attachment is personal preference. If you're like me, I cannot use the crossbow iron sights for my life. I have to use a red dot or small zoom sight. However, if you like the iron sights, then feel free to equip another laser or grip. The FS Sharkfin grip and the first 2 1mW lasers have no cons, so these make for excellent choices for those that only want to improve their build with no penalties. Again, this build, in my educated opinion, is the best overall build that retains both versatility and performance. Next, we'll cover an extremely mobile build, meant for staying on the move and close quarters. You trade velocity and long range capability for speed and more speed. First, we'll equip the speed track stock for better ADS times and mobility. Our next question is hipfire or snappy ADS. If you want snappy ADS without losing velocity and better movement speed, use the Carbon Elite arms. If you want better hipfire and even faster ADS speed, use the 100-pound Quill arms. Next is our laser. If you want an unseen laser, use the 1mW quickfire. Or you can fully commit to the speed build with the 7mW VOK laser for amazing sprint to fire and ADS times. And if you're really feeling crazy, equip the canted laser. It helps ADS times even more. From here, we can equip whatever bolt we feel comfortable using, although once again, I recommend using either the standard or explosive bolt. Gas bolts will stun you in close quarters, while thermite bolts take time to fully burn a target, meaning they can still shoot you back while burning. As for our grip, I recommend a TV wrecker grip or any hipfire grip for those last second clutch shots. We finally have our last attachment choice, optic or wire. We can counter our lowered velocity with the 28 strand here, so that's a solid choice. However, if you are comfortable with the bolt velocity, feel free to use any small optic to get a clearer sight picture. Again, these attachments are very optional and up to personal preference. For my last build, I made this with my old Ground War and Warzone 1 build in mind, the Silent Sniper build. Here, we prioritize accuracy, long range, and stealth. We'll start by equipping the SO Mementi arms for the 25% velocity boost. Next, we'll use the 16 strand cable for the best accuracy to velocity ratio. If more range is needed, use the default cable instead, but avoid the 28 strand for shots beyond 100 meters, unless using a scope. Lastly, we want the piercer stock for the best stability, but if readjusting the next shot seems difficult, try using the Apex stock instead. As for our bolt, in normal multiplayer, we want to use the standard bolt. However, if you have trouble getting one-hit kills, or want to damage vehicles, switch to the explosive bolts. If using standard bolts, use a stability grip for the free slot, such as the Commando foregrip or bipod grip for mounting. For stealth purposes, we want to avoid lasers as much as possible. Lastly, our optic choice. For a clear sight picture, but having scope glint, use the DSX Coriolis. It has easy to read markings that are great for calculating your zero at long range, and has perfect accuracy. This was my personal choice when performing my test at long range. For a more stealthy optic, try using the VOK 4-powered or Slogger 3.4 powered scope. Both have easy to read markings and no longer have scope glint after 38 meters to non-ADSing enemies. Like most optics, this is all down to personal preference, so use what you feel comfortable using. However, I would like to remind you that low zoom optics do have the accuracy penalties attachments give, so keep that in mind when thinking of long range fights. That covers all my recommended builds for you all. Next, we'll wrap this up with some general tips and you can be on your way. So now we're at the final part, and I put this in here to help you all with some last minute tips. Fast hands is a must-have for most crossbow users. It directly impacts your DPS and survivability. It saves 800 milliseconds, which is huge for Call of Duty. This is the sleight of hand of Modern Warfare 2019. Scavenger packs give 3 bolts back regardless of bolt type. I would recommend this for players using bolts that cannot be retrieved, such as the thermite or explosive bolts. This weapon is quiet. Use this to your advantage. It is considered suppressed by default and is quieter than any suppressed gun. It is untested if firing the crossbow disables ghosts like other weapons, so I'll get back to you in the future on this. In the past, thermite and explosive bolts were a hard counter to riot shield users. This still seems to be the case. Blow up those turtles easy peasy. Bomb Squad protects against explosives, so be wary of trying to get explosive splash kills against them. This weapon favors peek and hide tactics. Exposing yourself only when firing and using cover to reload is the best method. You can literally take cover while the bolt is still flying at its target. There is no need to watch it hit. Just like Modern Warfare 2019, special bolts will not fly through windows. The impact damage will go through, but the special tip will bounce back like the explosive tips. It still takes 2 bolts to break windows, but I recommend shooting an explosive bolt on the window frame to shatter it with only 1 shot. Lastly, this weapon is unforgiving. You miss, you die, so don't miss. Get good at quick scoping, hip firing, and half scoping. These skills will save your life as a crossbow user. And that's all I have for you for now. I hope this early guide was helpful. I'll be releasing a more detailed guide in the future once I get more testing in live games. I hope you all found this helpful, and comment down below any crossbow questions you'd like me to answer. I'll be streaming live on Twitch most days, 3 PM Central, and I'll usually play a variety of games, but my main ones are Hunt Showdown, Elden Ring, and Dark and Darker. I don't stream Call of Duty much anymore because it's a trash can fire of a game that honestly brings me immense pain trying to play. But if the crossbow is good, you might see me return, for a bit. There's much better games out there. Alright, good luck, and happy hunting out there.